So if I were, doing today what I should be doing, by the book, absolutely best, for the business. I would basically, candidly, I just be sort of retweeting or tweeting out our articles with no commentary.
Hmm.
But we're past the point of, basically sort of like people know we exist, they pay attention, they know we're credible. I'm a passionate human, and anybody is probably going to have some quirks, and one of mine is like I just simply have strong and often, not always, I'll admit it, but often based in insights and information that I have, and I don't feel comfortable self-censoring completely. Have strong feelings. That being said, it's not helpful. It's not helpful to the brand, uh, for the brand to be associated with my more, intense viewpoints, or
Hmm.
some stupid Twitter squabble.
Layer 1 is a podcast and community dedicated to helping you master all things crypto. We'll be bringing you the best interviews with project executives, technical analysis for trading of the most popular cryptocurrencies, and insight into what's actually happening behind the scenes.
As you join us each episode, you're going to hear about tokens, fundraisers, investments, and even crypto conspiracies. But please remember that nothing we say should be considered financial or legal advice.
Come join us on this journey, and welcome to Layer 1. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Layer 1. We're happy to have you into the channel, into the community this morning, this afternoon, wherever you may be listening to us. We have a great episode with TheBlock today, Mike Dudas. We will get to Mike here in a second, but we have to get to Dimitri wearing his 3 stripes. Dimitri, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I got my newsboy hat, 3 stripes. I'm ready for this next interview with TheBlock. These guys are obviously huge, so let's get it.
Yeah, we're gonna hit it. Dimitri almost didn't make the episode because Bitcoin just hit 6,200, and he's obviously got to do a lot around that. But
Does he have 2 computers right now? I assume you're trading, Dimitri, over on your left-hand side.
I do have my price charts that I'm watching, but I'm not trading during the interviews.
Okay, perfect.
if he drops off for technical issues at a certain point, we'll know why.
We know where he's at.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably got liquidated.
That means you're short, so you should get liquidated. But anyways, we do have Mike Dudas on. He's the CEO and founder of TheBlock, so we will get to him. Mike, you are not in your office in New York City right now. You are, upstate.
Yeah, I'll give you the quick overview. Yeah, so I'm in the shoreline of Connecticut. Anybody who watches this can probably see I'm a bit unshaven and unkempt. Got 3 generation of the Dudas, all in the same place. My dad's running his business out of our dining room. I'm doing it at the kitchen table. Homeschooling going on over in the family room. So we've got a lot of fun stuff. But fortunately, because TheBlock is in information business, and fortunately because we have a pretty distributed team in 6 time zones globally, really affected our operations. It's just meant that we have to be really disciplined about how we communicate, when we communicate, taking notes, those kinds of things.
How has that affected your business overall, COVID and just the overall crisis?
So overall, just for those who don't know, so TheBlock, basically our focus is, we like to say, the first and final word in digital assets. So what that means is, the first word will be the first place, the most credible source of information, whether that be research, journalism, or data on digital assets, broadly defined. So everything from public cryptocurrencies to private blockchains to central bank digital currencies. And over time, I think we'll see more in the security token and other digital asset fronts. So first word, hey, we're credible, you look to us. Then final word, because we have a mixed structure, we're research-driven journalism. So we have a journalism team of 5 people, a research team of 5 people, and then some interns to round it out. So 13 editorial folks in total. Because we have both research and journalism, we want to be the final place as well, that you trust, our research, you trust our, perspective on critical issues in the space. We've developed a nice, over the last 18 months as we've grown the team, and we've been pretty able in terms of the size of our editorial team, and it hasn't disrupted our operations fundamentally. What it has done is, to your question, it's actually kind of funny. We make a little bit of a joke internally. I make it probably more than others, that every crypto media company and business is pivoting into the coronavirus right now. What we try to do is, it's not our forte. We're not, doctors or experts in pandemics, but what we do, so how it's impacted us is obviously our working structure, but in terms of the content coverage, anything that we write that has kind of a direct implication. Look, the markets are volatile, not just digital asset markets. So we're covering the markets more broadly beyond digital assets lately. And then the stories have a coronavirus or volatility or uncertainty angle to them. We're not shy of mentioning that, but we're also not overdoing it. So if you look at our headlines, they're not blaring coronavirus thing.
Yeah, was that always a plan to go towards the broader market kind of feel, or in just to start in crypto, or was that just like a sign of the times?
So our fundamental competitive advantage and mission ethos, and why we've attracted the best people that we have in this particular space, is that we are a digital assets information organization. Okay, so that as our core foundational strength is critical. Now, it gives us an awesome platform, however, to basically cover adjacent areas. For example, all of the big fintech companies and even companies like Square are allowing folks to buy Bitcoin now, and realizing digital assets are an important part of their product suite. All of the big Chinese tech companies, the top 4, have their own blockchains. It's a national priority. So we can cover areas outside of digital assets. I think over time, you'll see us doing more of that. But digital assets is, we think, going to be a significant new asset class. It's going to continue to grow for the generation of folks who are our core customer. It's mainly folks under the age of 50. It's heavily male. And I think that'll change over time. But the under 50 piece, I think, is here to stay. And that's really unusual, actually, for a financial information company. So we're using that as a strength. And then we will expand our coverage over time. A good analogy, not in terms of the type of content and a specific strategy, but a good analogy might be Silicon Alley Insider becoming Business Insider, becoming just Insider. Again, we don't look like that type of content, and our migration probably, it won't be that extreme. But yeah, you'll see us cover more broadly. I also think what you'll see is this whole, where technology ate the world, now you're seeing sort of fintech eating up a lot of things. I believe that digital assets, 10 years out, and blockchain technology broadly will be impacting all industries. So it's just, our coverage area will just grow by proxy of the companies that we're able to cover and who are involved in working on things that our audience and our customers are interested in.
Yeah, I love that answer. And right now, I guess we'll have to backpedal a little bit, because usually, we joke at Layer One that we get 20 minutes into the episode and then we discuss what you're here for or what company you represent. But we did you did just give us a great introduction of TheBlock. I'm sure not a lot of people needed it, because you guys are doing such a good job within the industry that obviously TheBlock is a great name. So let's backpedal a little bit. Let's talk about Mike Dudas. Let's talk about how you grew up. Let's talk about how you found yourself in tech, and then how you found yourself in crypto. So
thank you. Yeah, I grew up, I'm back at home. Who thought I'd be moving back home at 40 with my family? Hopefully, hopefully just for a few months, but we've come full circle. So I was fortunate enough to my dad ran a business, a family business, and so was exposed to business very early. In my childhood, and really, always had, pardon me, a sense that wanted to operate a business myself. So focused on that in college. Went to school at Stanford in California. That was really eye-opening. I was fortunate enough to grow up on the East Coast, but really kind of become an adult on the West Coast. And while I'm not an engineer, was obviously exposed to tech, very early on. Tried to take some computer science classes and was just murdered. And I ended up taking a business job at Disney. That was my first job in corporate strategic planning for them. And powerful group there. Kevin Mayer, who is the number 2 guy at Disney now, basically ran that group years ago when I was there. And so I learned a ton about business, media information. But my true passion, I graduated college into the tech crash. So I couldn't get a job in tech. I wanted to work in business in tech. So I waited a few years, worked in media and entertainment, learned about financials and deals, and then wasted 2 years in business school. And not be, it was a lot of money, a lot of time. It wasn't a good decision. I didn't need it. It's right for some people. I wouldn't recommend it for most. So 2007, got my footing, moved back to the East Coast where I'd wanted to live. I'd never lived in New York proper. So the past 13 years, I've been working in New York in tech. Started at a small startup, Union Square Ventures and Bain Capital backed. One of those companies, Fred Wilson was on the board, big names. He's somebody I'd read for a long time, so it got me interested in that company. And it wasn't a massive success, but the people I met were incredible. And it was so wild to go from working at big, rigorous, structured companies to working at a startup. So within 2 years there, I was director of business development. I've had every title you can imagine that other than sales, even though all I've done for the past 13 years, not all I've done, but the primary role has been sales. The director of business development at a ad network. 2009, second crisis hit, knew that startup, was not going to have a massive success exit. Was fortunate enough through my network from college to find a job at Google, and spent 3.5, almost 4 years there. And most of that time working on Google Wallet. So Google's an incredible company, gave me the ability to transition, not because I had any special skill set, but just, hey, you're doing a good job. We have this new team on Google Wallet, get after it. And so, basically read a book, payments systems in the US, and I'm off and running and literally going Walmart's treasury and trying to sell them a Google payment product. That was well before its time, but I learned a ton in terms of merchant partnerships, payments in the real world, and then digital payments on a phone. Met some folks on that team who then went to Braintree, which owned Venmo at the time. So I was fortunate enough to work at Venmo for a little under a year and a half. Thought it would be much longer, but sold to PayPal. But while I was at Venmo and Braintree, met the Coinbase team. And we were thinking about, accepting Bitcoin payments, putting them into the Braintree gateway so that our customers, Uber and Airbnb, could accept Bitcoin. That process started, got me interested. And I purchased some Bitcoin in 2013 because of it. And so I've always been curious. That and Chamath's, famous Schmuck Insurance article in Bloomberg. So those two things, bought and got interested. Anyway, PayPal bought Braintree. And at this point, I think I was 34 and decided that I wanted to start a company and be part of that and really create something. As I said, come from a family business background. Started a pure tech company. It's a SaaS company based in New York called Button. Spent 4 years as part of the founding team, chief revenue officer, and got it to a point where I felt like we were really doing well. It's now 145, 150 person company. Significant revenue, great backing, and growing rapidly. But I didn't feel like it was my calling. I spent about a decade at that point working in kind of fintech and technology that ultimately operated within the legacy financial, infrastructure, including Button, which is a mobile commerce, an affiliate company. Again, all interesting businesses, learned a ton, loved it. But, having followed Bitcoin since 2013, really saw an opportunity to do something to work within, money and technology in a way that will have, I think, lasting implications for decades. So in late 2017, we had our second child. I was out of paternity leave and said, hey, it's time to do something in crypto. So made the decision to leave Button. Didn't know what I was going to do next. And I'll stop there. But this was beginning of 2018, a weekend. I left Button. We're at all-time highs, and I'm off. And now I was figuring out, hey, what am I going to do in this space?
Wow, that's amazing. The background is so impressive. You know, you went through a lot of ventures. I always have this question when I talk to people that work at Google. You know, is it similar kind of a startup vibe there as like the crypto side, and how are they how do they feel about Bitcoin and crypto just in general over there?
So it's been a long time since I worked at Google, and it's probably changed,
Hmm.
significantly. I know it has because I have some friends who are still there. So what I will say is this: the cultures, the culture of the people participating in the industry. When I was in, we'll call it big tech, uh, even in the emergent startup divisions like Google Wallet, which was just a team that went from 0 people to 200 people over the span of 15 months. Uh, it, I don't want to call it professionalism. There's just a level of, it's a different, business oriented, pure tech mindset, rigor driven. You see it at the best crypto companies, the Coinbases of the world, the Krakens. You see it at Binance. I mean, they operate differently, but in terms of the product output, you see that discipline, but you don't see that. I don't think just generally in the ecosystem. You see,
Mhm.
and we can get to this obviously, but there's so big companies. You see a much more professional discourse, a quiet discourse, and just execution around emergent ideas. You do see a ton of sources behind them. An example of that would be Square. Basically birthing Cash App in house, putting a phenomenal professional team around that. And I think, in 10 years, that business is going to be worth tens of billions of dollars in and of itself, maybe the bulk of the value of Square at that point. So, there's definitely an openness at companies to embrace change, and more so than ever, frankly. I mean, I think since I left Google, since I left PayPal, you've seen the big tech companies innovating at an incredible pace. Microsoft's reinvented itself, Amazon reinvested itself, creates new products. Tons of innovation happening within the biggest tech companies. And I don't think that's going to change. And frankly, we can get this is a whole nother podcast, but what we see over the next 6 months very well may make people rebounding in 2021 want to work at big companies. And you're going to see, I would imagine, to some of these really large companies that have stronger cash positions than startups. I mean, even startups like Lyft you see today are just getting banged,
Mm.
and are like worth a couple $1 billion, net of the cash on the balance sheet. So it's a weird time. It's a crazy time, but yeah. So big companies, big tech companies in particular, are extremely innovative. By the way, even the incumbent banks who we crap on all day, and I mean collectively, folks in the digital asset space or the crypto space, they're innovative as hell, man. Like
Hmm.
they've created Zelle. It takes them
Yeah.
forever, but
Yeah.
they've created, they create faster payments, and basically any good idea you have, if it breaks out, you're going to either create it themselves, or they're going to buy it. You saw Plaid obviously being purchased by Visa.
Hmm.
So these are really, really talented firms. As all companies become, tech companies or tech enabled, I think you're going to continue to see them become better and better at innovating within this big company structure.
Interesting. So, from a personal perspective, you talked about SaaS, you talked about payment services. How did you find yourself founding a publication, a journalistic publication and editorial company? How did you do that?
Yeah, so I looked at the space, surveyed the space in 2018, and look, I think it was obvious to anybody we were in a bubble. Like, who knew when it was going to end and how high it was going to go and how low it was going to drop? But we knew things were pricey. So January 2018 turned out to be the peak. My timing was impeccable. I wrote my day one podcast, my day one blog post, I think on January 17th, and we were at like Bitcoin, 15 or 16 or 17K. I looked at the space. I said, hey, I started companies and run worked on emergent business within big organizations. As I look across, so you can't go work at Bitcoin, you can't go work at you can work at the Ethereum Foundation, but I was a Bitcoiner and still am 100% allocated to Bitcoin, even though I do believe a lot of other things are interesting, and we can talk about that if we have time. But I didn't see
We
a
have time.
project. Yeah, okay, cool. See a project that it made sense for me to join. I also didn't see companies outside like Coinbase would have been interesting, but didn't really have jobs in New York. And so there were some companies that might have been interesting, but I did want to, I think, do something independent. So my two options were like start a company. I didn't really see a technology company as being a really good thing to start at that time, or I was thinking about actually investing and I think, but I looked at it, I said, everything's like so overpriced. Like and I have no edge. I haven't been a trader. So what I thought was lacking, and I knew this from the time of paternity leave, which was kind of October and November, pardon me, of 2017, was that information in this space, we'll call it digital assets broadly, so much new information. This was the peak of it when ICO is every 6 minutes. There's just so much of it bad, so much of it, much of it criminal, oriented to scam people, that I felt like that was a place that I could help make a difference. I've always been good at helping amplify from X to 10 or 100X, and can sort of cut through the BS to figure out signal and what's important. So it had been a very difficult information journey for me to get to a point where I felt comfortable saying anything publicly. So I was lucky enough through my network to be in a bunch of really top-notch Telegram groups with like experts and a broad range of the top VCs, the top protocol people. But I was very quiet, which is unusual for me, as you know. And I was just listening, and really, the mixture of distributed systems, protocol economics, governance, money, technology, like just so much at play that it is so confusing. And again, when there's really bad information sources, so there was a real retail market at the time, and I thought, hey, maybe I'll create something that can help people like me who are trying to get deeper into the space, individuals, get more information. And so originally TheBlock, the tagline was crypto simplified, and we were going to be retail focused. We quickly, over 6 months, learned, hey, the market crashed. There still really isn't a massive retail market out there that's willing to sort of buy, information, pay for information. There's not really a sustainable business model there. We're still a small enough sort of ecosystem and industry that we learned by the end of 2018, you have to really be servicing the professional. And the professional could, by the way, be an individual, but you have to be servicing the professional market. So we did make that choice. During that time, I raised money, $2 million, and raised it, on the pitch of bringing information clarity to the crypto and digital asset space. And the strong sort of the strong reference point was, look, all the other information sources out there are either clickbait, confusing, or they're owned by somebody with a really vested interest. CoinDesk owned by Digital Currency Group. There's Decrypt, which is owned by Consensus, and Joe Lubin. And then there's all the other ones. Kind of, if you really dig deep, there's some there's some entity that has a self-interest. So we're independent, and we're focused on professionals. And we decided to go with a paid versus sort of a clickbait model.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, when we worked at ICO Alert back in the day when ICOs were going crazy, I completely agree with you with the misinformation that was available during that time to some of the potential retail investors that were looking to get in. And we tried our best to have interviews with ICOs and do reports where we asked tough questions where they had to answer them and so on, to kind of provide more information for the retail side. So there was a lot of obviously misinformation during that time. What's kind of the process for you guys to filter this out? How do you guys investigate and get to the bottom of that? What is really happening? Compared to maybe some just other research or publications that do just the surface and maybe not get into the deep side of it, right? How do you ensure that this is in fact, what it really is,
Yeah. So the critical difference between our organization and any other organization that has journalism as a key component of what they do is that we have a research team. And I would argue, and I think many would agree, that it's the best research team in the space. Certainly the best independent research team. There are good research teams within investment companies and folks like that, but they're world class, right? So effectively, you have a team of experts, all who are complementary, right? So we have folks who are Ethereum experts. We have folks who are sort of general market experts. We have Larry, who's just a broad range of expertise, and really doesn't have a bias for or against any specific coins. So it's who leads our research team. So these folks, the process really is get really, really deeply embedded with the smartest mind in the world. So, our customer base, by the way, is a lot of them are folks on projects or folks who are investors. So we're talking to them, every not every day, day in and day out, getting real information. We're in the information flow. In addition, Frank Chaparro came from Business Insider, young guy, but incredible. We call him 24 going on 60. Incredibly deep and networked in sort of traditional Wall Street, the emergent group within all the big companies that are doing things in digital assets. So being really close and having those networks allows us to sort of see trends and know what's happening ahead of time. We also have committed not to cover everything. So we are never going, it's fine if, Cointelegraph, for example, publishes 30 stories in a day and we publish 8, as long as we believe the 8 that we cover are, let's just say 8 good journalism stories and then 2 great research pieces. Folks are looking to us for signal versus just covering every single thing that happened. So there's no hard and fast rules other than hire the best people, retain them, have them get into the deepest of networks, and have them sort of use their judgment. I mean, it really is like good old-fashioned editorial judgment. I've seen other folks try to move to, there was that True Story company that was like, hey, we'll state a fact, and then we're going to kind of let the hive mind decide, is that fact true or false? Like, candidly, that's just not how information works, and it never has, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So hire good people who are really, really sharp, and then, by the way, once they get together, if Larry has a piece that he's going to do, well, now he's sitting with 6 other world-class people who can test his assumptions, who can, tell him, hey, that's good, that's not. On the journalism side, these folks are incredible. Celia, Yilun, Frank, Yogita, and they can both lean on the expertise of our researchers if they have questions, and therefore, their charts are going to be better. Their depth of and quality on a markets piece is going to be better than your average journalist in another publication. At the same time, they're journalists, so they're very different in how they ask questions and how they push. So it's just so complementary, and they work together. I mean, so we're really fortunate. By the way, we didn't know it was going so darn well. A lot of it is about people and how the organization evolves. It's true of any startup once you hire them and put that team together. And this one has really evolved to be super complementary. And we can get into what our business model is, but it really was shaped by the people and the opportunity.
Yeah, I want to have a broader conversation about how Twitter and Reddit, Telegram all play into journalism today. I think you have an interesting dynamic and an understanding of all of those things because you're at TheBlock and also, have your own personal Twitter where you kind of have your own thoughts, right? It is funny, and you touched on it there, but we always ask people at the end of the episode, and Dimitri can attest to this, hey, what do you see in the space? Like, what projects are you interested in? And for the most part, all of them are like, what, my heads are down. It's almost too hard to see the entire crypto landscape. And this is kind of the meat of the episode that I want to get into because, we always ask a community question in the Telegram, our Telegram group. And when we said, we were having TheBlock, we were having Mike on from TheBlock, there's a lot of people that are associated with projects that might have visceral reactions or hot reactions to TheBlock and to yourself personally. So how do you marry kind of what TheBlock does to your personal brand and trying to cover all of these things objectively as well as have, personal opinions?
So if I were, doing today what I should be doing, by the book, absolutely best, for the business, I would basically, candidly, I'd just be sort of retweeting or tweeting out our articles with no commentary. But we're past the point of, basically sort of like people know we exist, they pay attention, they know we're credible. I'm a passionate human, and anybody, is probably going to have, some quirks. And one of mine is like, I just simply have, strong and often, not always, I'll admit it, but often, based in, insights and information that I have. And I just, I don't feel comfortable, self-censoring completely when I have, strong feelings. That being said, it's not helpful. It's not helpful to the brand, for the brand to be associated with my more, intense viewpoints, or, some stupid Twitter squabble, which I think if you look back a year and a half, I got more of those on, myself and TheBlock than were necessary. Sort of established us as kind of a fiery nation, publication and group. And what happened then is I actually do believe that I've back on that, certainly in terms of personally at specific folks. But the memory, that pugnaciousness lingers, and then people sort of feel emboldened to come after us. And so anyway, it's not like it's a pain in the ass, but you sort of brought on yourself with it. So the team would say, and they're right, investors would say, Mike, wow, just focus on the business, right? And they do, and they're smart. And if you talk to me in this format, like, I probably seem a lot more reasonable than some of what I'm saying in tweets. So this is the person I am. At the same time, I like to be feisty. So I think a lot of it's overblown. I think this space is one where people just like, including at times me. I mean, it's just I'm human, and this is what draws people to an emergent, frontier technology and money space like this. They're passionate and they just like to poke and look. And anyway, but we can get away from that, and we have to. We're working with that. I am personally, and I think working. But there's going to continue to be some blowups, and there's some residual impacts of this. Now, interesting is now we're entering a phase where we actually see resentment and frustration directed at us because of our success. So it's like poking people. Now we are getting trolled by people, and kind of have to even like sort of try to ignore it. And like, I'm not naming names, but like it's good. We see people sort of copying increasingly our business structure and model, and trying to emulate it, because we've been pretty excited that we're seeing significant revenue traction, and people are paying attention to us. Last thing I'll say is, look, when we put a controversial piece out, forget Twitter, forget Reddit, forget all that, we get heat from people like CZ, and we get heat from people like Justin Sun and others for actual factual journalism and research. Folks like the Block Stack people, who we've covered accurately and who have just lost their minds. And I think that is a testament to how credible we are. I've been on their side. I've been, a leader at technology companies. You want to control the narrative. People are not used to research-driven publications. And by the way, a lot of media is struggling with this right now. There's kind of, you're seeing companies become very emboldened and feel like, they can attack factual reporting. It comes from Donald Trump and others who've created, he was doing it right before we started this, saying he thinks he's handling the pandemic fine, but
10 out of 10
or something. I mean, guys, he's something else, but he has created a culture where people feel far too comfortable in attacking the media now. And I think it's a really dangerous place to be. And people want it ways. They want the media to be docile, not have opinions, and publish, basically the talking points that the powerful person wants. At the same time, they're saying media is also powerful. Like, big media, New York Times are owned by all these big corporations. That's bullshit. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. The companies that are attacking journalists, and I'm speaking in really broad swaths in general terms, but for the most part, the media back right now is significantly alone. And I say that as who's been, it's happening right now, the microcosm in technology journalism, and it's really being attacked in a number of ways. And what I see happening is some of the weird things. Like, media is not perfect, and media is not one entity. I mean, it's a function of pieces and processes. I see a lot of folks cherry picking, specific bad things or specific quotes or specific errors, hacking viciously, and then project to, hey, this entire ecosystem's broken. Now, hilarious is I've seen some of the folks who have done massively try to information projects. One very prominent one in the crypto space recently that have been, just a total disaster. So, it's always easier to tell other people, how to do their jobs than it is to actually do it yourself.
Yeah, you were on Masari's podcast, and I was giving that a listen this morning. It was funny. One portion of the interview, you were saying, I could say one thing, and then someone else who's kind of the head of a project could say the exact same thing. And while you have this visceral reaction of people just going at you, that person could just be lauded by their pundits and everybody that follows that project. But
that literally happened, by the way. I mean, Teo Leibowitz on our team came out with the piece on the Bitcoin halving and mining, and some of the things sort of started to play out as potentially true. And look, it was a paywalled piece, so not everybody could read it in context. But then a couple of days later, you have experts saying some of the exact same things Teo had been saying, and like the crypto, retweet machine was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And the same exact things Teo said. It's also interesting that you bring up Ryan, who I had a very cordial conversation with, 3 weeks ago. And he blocked me on Twitter 3 days ago because he was mad, about something that somebody on my team had written that didn't even relate to him. That's not a reflection on Ryan. I have respect for him. Definitely a reflection on Ryan. It's not a reflection on the totality of our relationship. We're all in an tense space. The stakes are high. We compete with him. He competes with us. I have respect. Believe they have respect for us. There's things we like of them. There's things we don't like about them, and vice versa. I think that really is this space. You bring that together. It's small, somewhat insular, still extremely tribal. You're going to get these kind of flare-ups and whatnot. And so what we've been doing, so right? So I blocked him back, and guess what? That's probably how a lot of them handle this stuff. Just take each other. If you're feeling, so if you're not making your competitors feel a little bit uncomfortable, you're not doing. And two, if you're paying too much attention to them, you're also not doing your job right. So I think this kind of social media distancing, to play on a term that we're doing, in real life, is actually a healthy thing. And I've done a ton of it. I've muted a ton of people. I know others have as well. And I do think that we've seen clear thinking, and I think more serious over the past, let's say 6 to 8 weeks in coverage in the space. I certainly, and again, it's because I altered myself through blocking socially and just focusing on our team. But I think the seriousness of what, the world is facing right now has actually improved the discourse. Would you guys agree with that? Or is it something I mean during the process?
No, absolutely. I mean, I definitely agree. Q, what do you think? What do you think of that?
So repeat the question. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. So have you seen, I feel like the dialogue within, the crypto space has elevated recently to be much more focused on important stuff. Like, hey, how moving, causing them to move, you name it. I think journalism's, been better in the space. I've been genuinely pleased, and maybe it's just because there's real news to cover.
I would say that I agree with that, but the one thing I would touch on is how personalities on Twitter kind of marry with the brand, and I do think that plays out in crypto more than any other space, and it plays on that narrative. So I think there's a lot of good information coming from now people with a ton of followers, and I think that conversation plays out over the Twitter sphere more so than it ever has. I think it kind of like was in the background on Reddit and things like that, maybe in years past, and now that is coming out on a large scale more than normal.
I think you're right. No, you're right, and now you have enough history in a downturn, and the tourists left. Like, who are the credible voices? Whereas in 2017, you might not have known, to follow like Ryan Selkis, who is High Signal, or Nick Carter, or Hasu, or Su, or, the Block team. Now you do. So exactly. it's not quite hard now to know, okay, which Medium piece or which, people do I just follow and listen to. So that's improving, but what we expect happens, meaning you're going to see as we come out of this, many more projects, many more things being built on top of the protocols as start to or continue to emerge as winners. There's just going to continue to be so much information that needs to be covered, both from a research standpoint, a data standpoint, and a journalism standpoint, that we've never been more optimistic about our role in the space. To get to your social media point, so it's essential to have, it's essential that some folks within any media and information organization have a social presence. Like it's expected in this day and age. But yeah, it can't overshadow, particularly for a serious B2B and like ours, it can't overshadow the overarching brand. And I will say, CoinDesk does do a good job of this. CoinDesk's brand is the one that you think, and even Decrypt, you think of the brand. I think with TheBlock, we're making that position where a lot of people still think about the personalities. And, I hope that in 2 years, people know the personalities and the underpinnings of their thinking. This is that the TheBlock brand really stands for, the first and final word in digital assets.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you in regards to putting out some controversial topics, especially knowing how, tribal our industry is when it comes to specific networks, coins, and so on, right? And I think, the downturn in this market definitely doesn't help, because a lot of people are probably holding those tokens, and then you have to put out content and information about those projects that might not be, positive. And then you get, bombarded with critics, trolls, and so on, right? So yeah, it's definitely, tough to do that. I do it myself, where I host a TA show, and talk about, specific TA on coins, right? And then if I have bearish formations, people will come at me, all like, with pitchforks, so, yeah.
Brother, I feel you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's tough, but let's talk about, so, with TheBlock, you have the paywall, right? So is all the content, with the paywall, or is there some free content? Like, how do you guys decide? And how do you keep that, content kind of paywall? Could somebody actually get in there, who's a paid member, and just copy that and post it publicly, or like, what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, they could. We've had that happen at various times, particularly internationally. And I think people sort of socially push back against that if they see it happening. And so the stronger it becomes and the more advocates you have, people will let us know. So again, never something that you're going to totally avoid. And yeah, we're fine with like the information, or like, other publications with folks sharing content reasonable ways. Protect Ben Thompson. We don't want a big company, to have one subscription and then be forwarding it to 250 people every day. So to your original question though, so our business model is primarily, so our long-term business model will be more in the vein of CBN or a pitch book. The product won't look exactly like any of these. I'm just using them as reference points, but call it the majority of the revenue will come from enterprises paying a significant amount annualized for access to differentiate information about the people, the protocols, the projects, and the companies in the crypto space. And then, just broadly some general information, things like market maps and stuff like that. So we're 18 months into building up. We have over 1,000 paywalled pieces, a really credible library. We're productizing it, making it searchable, and our model is the subscription model. So today, $2,500 a year to subscribe to TheBlock Research. We just rebranded it from a product called Genesis. And then, there will be, by the end of it, an add-on called Explorer that will go even deeper and will really look like a book style product, where you can actually search deep information on and so the way now, you can hire a big enterprise sales team to go out and sell that, and CB Insights kind of does that. CB Insights does it by content marketing, their top of funnel, and then they have a bunch of sales development reps. But again, it's taken them 10 years to get where they are. We want to really shortcut that and do it much faster. So what we've done is hired a really great journalism team. Journalism is our top of funnel. So the majority of our journalism is free. Okay. On any given day during the week, we typically produce, let's just say, anywhere between 8 and 12 pieces of journalism, and anywhere between 1 and 2 of them are paywalled. The rest are free. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to one of the sites that tracks volume, you'll see we had 600,000 last month. We had over page views. So most people access our content or see it through free journalism. What's interesting is that's not the product that really it underpins TheBlock as a entity or pays the bills long term. Mm-hmm. It's great in terms of 35 advertisers or sponsors who we worked with. We choose very deliberately, and those folks sponsor that free content. So you use some ads, sponsored posts, things like that on our site, and then our newsletter. So our newsletter is now at 32,000 subscribers, huge open rate. People love that. So that's free content. It's a bulk of content, bulk of views. You can get that to be a break even or slightly better than break even business if you do a good job of it. And so that's what we'll do. But the real enterprise value here comes in using that top of funnel and that great brand that we're building to become the go-to, like the heart, the beat organization is our research and data team.
So that research analysis, what exactly, without giving too much away, what goes into each paid article that, say, someone that pays that amount gets? Yeah,
so it's we have a routine where right now we have 5 full-time and some intern researchers, right? And they're responsible typically, let's just say roughly for 2 pieces per week per person. So yeah, they're putting in 2.5 days a week work, and each have their own specialties, right? So Larry, for example, does a lot of like macro work and some Bitcoin work. We use all the tools that you could imagine. We actually have open sourced just the list of tools and linked to them of what we use to put together our research. Some of the really deep dives into specific projects. Teo, who's the sort of he goes primarily for us, a lot of other stuff, but that's his primary space. He'll spend weeks, talking to projects, going really deep, getting into the economics, the governance of them. And then what we do is we present through, trying to distill all that knowledge that these folks are gathering into, just a set of key insights and let's say 4 or 5 charts per piece. If it's a chart heavy piece, really strong signal on what's happening. So what assets is Bitcoin correlated to? And then by the way, updating that. So there are like, let's just say 15 to 20 thematic pieces that we think matter, crypto trading volume. And we've created our own for real trading volume that actually has 20 exchanges versus the 10 exchanges that some other folks use. So, basically it's getting key insights, constant and updating them, and then we deliver them every morning, 2 pieces per, sometimes 3, to our readers. And so the interesting thing is we then distribute them through Twitter, other places. People hit the paywall and they can make a choice on whether they want to purchase. But the process is it's intensive, it's personal, and it scales with people. Hey, the good news is because we financial markets, willing to pay is significant. You both know.
Gotcha. Okay. So you kind of touched on it there when you were talking previously, maybe about 5 minutes ago, but you're saying how TheBlock is kind of moving towards maybe a more, I wouldn't say professional, but less towards the personality and more towards the brand. I think you kind of see like more personality in publication, websites like Barstool. I think they've really championed we're going to do it with personalities as opposed to doing it with the brand. So I think from like a retail perspective and a viewer's perspective, I think they definitely look like the personalities. And what I want to touch on right now is
Yeah.
maybe a run. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, quickly, I'll just say the crypto space is not big enough to support a Barstool type personality-led company right now. The overall financial market space is, and I've heard a number of folks, Howard Lindzen, who is fantastic, started Stock Twits years ago, and love that. It's definitely time. The right person is going to start a Barstool for financial. There's no question. Hey, I'd love to fund that myself. I'd love to find. I'd probably be darn good at it, but I'm busy. But anyway, I interrupted you on the rest of your.
No, I was just going to ask for a rundown maybe of the people that you have on staff now that are interesting follows on Twitter. Like what are their specific personalities? What are they good at? So that maybe the viewers could type the handle into Twitter and see what they're all about.
Yeah. So the easiest way to find out who are the Block's personalities and who tweets is just go to the Block's handle at TheBlock __. We don't have the prime real estate, unfortunately. I think there's like some show in the UK that has The Block. But anyway, at TheBlock __. And if you look there, we follow all of the people on our team. So you'll see the list of folks in our team. The personalities are really interesting. So Larry, search, he's at Lawmaster. He's fun as heck. He's what we call a no coiner, but that not in like the no coiner way, in the skeptical but interested kind of way. As I mentioned, Teo Liebs is really deep in the open finance and DeFi space, and has some fun barbs at Bitcoin and other protocols at times. But and that's what's interesting. There's a health on the team. Steven Zhang, research team member, tremendous. He's a Doja Toshi. It's a play on the Dogecoin. And he's a Bitcoiner. John D'Antoni on our team has, he kind of, we make fun of him. Like any coin that is out there, he might be willing to put money into. And then Ryan Todd. Yeah, right. And then Ryan Todd is a very professional, markets-oriented person. So he's got a great sense of humor, but he comes from a Deutsche Bank, and he has that research analyst background, just incredible macro thought. So they're all, and the journalism team is a mix of, to your point, you have to have personality. So, Frank and he's a mixture of lifestyle content and markets content. So, he's probably the best example of putting your personality out there in a really healthy, funny way, but also putting out really this work. And then Thea and Yilun on our team are both tremendous. And again, put some our team is they put their personalities out there. I love it, right? And it's in keeping with the spirit. Most of our team is somewhere between the age 21 and 30, and so they really are native to just kind of communicating in media and in life digitally. And they do a really good job of it. So we're trying to do that, though, not like Barstool, but in professional content type organization. And I don't see us changing. You really have to pick as a brand, what lane are you going to be in? You can't be The Block. And, I had a name. I'm trying it'll come back to me, but if we had done like a sub brand, we were joking about it, what it would be. You just can't have both under the same umbrella with the same people. You literally need to start a system application to do that well.
Got it. Well, Mike, we're almost 1 hour into the interview. Let's get to the part where Bitcoin is now and when is it going to moon, and just kind of talk about a little bit, how like this, epidemic is affecting, crypto and Bitcoin. Everybody's hoping that it's a store of value, especially with, everybody printing money around economies, lowering rates and so on, right? Everybody's, that's the plan for plan B, as everybody says, for Bitcoin, to really pick up the pace as, the economies are starting to do all these things and we hit the epidemic, and things are starting to go south with the monetary policies. What do you see right now, as far as the Bitcoin goes in the current environment?
So I'm as bullish as I've ever been and just given price and given that the halving is coming within the next 2 months, and given that Bitcoin recently 50% of its value in like 24 hours, I believe, and I'm not a MITS person nor am I a trader. I'm a long-term holder. That being said, I did buy the December 2018 bottom almost to the nail, like within $100. And so the team jokes with me about being the bottom caller. I also, about 3 days ago, tweeted is now time to buy about an hour after it had been, like, basically within an hour of it hitting 3,800 again, and it's at 62. So if
How
this
do I
one
subscribe
holds,
to your letter?
just follow me on Twitter. I delete all my tweets, by the way. People give me crap about that. It's funny, but I get a lot of crap for it. But I'm like, guys, they're all archived. The internet archive everything. I can find any tweet I've ever tweeted. Right. So, and people who want to dunk on me can find them. But anyway, my point is, so I don't make short-term price calls. That's just not what I. Look, the world around us, it has a lot of issues, and a lot of issues that you would think really play into out of necessity. Central banks printing incredible amounts of money, lowering rates to unprecedented lows, over a long period of time. We're headed into what I think is going to be it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be a quick recovery. People are going to be looking for a uncorrelated store of value. Now, Bitcoin has not proven that to date. But what I would say is you have this sort of base. There are folks who are going to continue to mine Bitcoin. So I think you have baseline bottom price protection. Network continues to prove its value day in and day out, and its security. Meanwhile, you see so many other issues with other blockchains. Ethereum has a lot of challenges ahead of it. There's a lot of interesting activity happening in the Ethereum ecosystem, but they're going to be in transition for the next couple of years. So, look, Bitcoin to me is it's the only thing I hold. I've never seen a reason to add anything else when I think relative to adding a Bitcoin position. I'm infamous or famous for basically having sold my entire 401k and IRAs last year so that I wouldn't have to sell Bitcoin in the long run. And by the way, with where stocks are today, I'm looking pretty. Like sold at a nice number, and I took penalties and things like that. But all this is to say that I put my money where my mouth is on Bitcoin, and I believe over a long-term horizon, 10-year horizon, it's really realizing a lot of the properties. We can go through all the different use cases, but you have different countries where there are capital controls. You have different countries where there's rampant inflation. You have all of the sort of illicit and censorship and censored transaction forms. So meanwhile, there's a lot of issues with Bitcoin itself. Hey, can it scale? Hey, does it have privacy? Those are being worked on, and I'm confident those problems and challenges have a higher probability of being solved based on the people working on them, based on the conservatism of nature of the technology approach than other blockchains. And I think these are important problems to solve, particularly, and this is the closing point, in a world where we're moving towards central bank digital currencies, where you will have the ability to track money from issuance to usage. I think it's a really scary world where you have private money potentially being issued by folks like Facebook. The reason I entered this space is because I think having the option to transact in we'll call it quote unquote decentralized money, but not censorship resistant money, is going to become more important in the world that we're entering and entering more rapidly through the advent of central bank digital currencies and through this current pandemic than anything. And just to have this price point right now, I think is pretty active. So I've advised folks who I know who have money, dollar average in. Right, reasonable amount, not too much of your net, of course. I mean, this is a risk asset.
100x.
I'm obviously, I'm over.
Not
I'm
investment advice. 100x.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm over indexed, but I think there's a
Okay.
lot of upside, and I tell people that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm following you on that Bitcoin narrative. You touched on Ethereum a little bit. Obviously, on layer one, we like to have a ton of projects. There's been projects on this channel that have, built on Ethereum, on EOS, on Cosmos, on a ton of different, networks. I can get the feeling, and I see where your head is at as far as the crypto landscape is. And I think that's an objective look at the crypto landscape. So give me a timeline of when you think maybe altcoins or these different networks will actually come to relevance. Because I think on the Masari podcast,
Yeah,
you kind of liken them to startups, right? Like most of them are going to fail, and
exactly.
some will come. But give me a timeline of when you think maybe these altcoins will not take over, but start to become relevant. Because you can almost even
Yeah,
claim that Ethereum has decoupled itself from this
yeah. So
altcoin claim.
Ethereum is not exactly. So good question. Ethereum's not an altcoin. Now, do I think Ethereum is valued appropriately given the economic activity happening on top of it? Not really. I mean, it seems pretty expensive to me, particularly in today's world where, again, if you think of startups, like startups are getting hammered right now, even, technology companies that are trading publicly. So I wouldn't feel comfortable entering. So maybe if you're making the case that Ethereum's money, okay, maybe it's, you could say I feel comfortable at this valuation. That the argument for Bitcoin, of course, is that it's digital gold right now. But in terms of utility on any of these protocols, they're all, to my mind, insanely overvalued. Now, you could say, hey, they're an option on eventually increasing significantly in value. So they are like venture bets. And I think that's how people are treating them. And I understand that. That's why a lot of them are actually venture backed tokens. I think that I can say with my strong belief is some are definitely overvalued. One would be Ripple, right? There's just no utility to that token that could ever justify the price that it trades at. That's not to say there's no utility, period. It's just to say that there's no utility at that network's price level. EOS, same thing. It's overvalued relative to any rational, economic activity happening on that protocol. Litecoin, I'm totally confused about that one.
I'm going to clip out this part of the episode and just send it to the various Reddit groups.
Yeah, feel free if you need to. And then and then partially, so like Chainlink, for example, is a project that has some value. Again, it's a bet right now, venture bet. What's weird is just that these tokens trade like stocks with even more liquid, like it's not more liquid, but more 24/7 like stocks with insane communities that attack you for showing any sort of doubt. And obviously, some are bots, some are paid trolls, and some just have really heavy bags. But the bottom line is, I'm comfortable with somebody who says, I'm going to buy Chainlink today, and it's a venture bet that in 10 years it's going to be worth something. I'm not okay with somebody who's pumping the token to retail saying this thing's mooning because because Google Cloud, like some partnership that doesn't mean anything exists. That's dangerous. So that's where you'll see me occasionally publicly get a little frustrated or a lot frustrated and state things about certain projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Speculation is the name of the game in our industry, and speculation tends to outrun reality very quickly in our space. And those that are trying to keep the speculation to the upside, obviously will be pretty aggressive when you start, trying to dig deeper and come down to the reality. So I agree on that front for sure. So yeah, the last question as we wrap up this interview, we give this question to all of our guests, is, a book recommendation. It can be related to crypto and can, not be related to crypto. What's your favorite book that you would, tell our listeners?
So glad you asked. So I am in the process of reading Disunited Nations by Peter. Yeah, Peter. I don't know how you pronounce it, Zahan or Zihan. Read it. I'm 150 pages in. It's mind-blowingly good. He's such a clear and thoughtful writer about effectively the sort of world order we've had kind of economically and geopolitically since World War II, and how that's going to be changing. He following his blog for a long time. He's brilliant, and I think it's a very, very timely read for folks who participate in the crypto, digital asset, Bitcoin communities.
Yeah, I know you need to run here. Had you caught Peter's like speaking at conferences on YouTube at all?
I had, and that's what got me interested in him.
Okay.
Somebody posted on Twitter, I don't know, 8 months ago. I watched one of his speeches. I was like, holy crow. Yeah, I got to follow this guy. And I've not met him in person. That's, my fanboy thing that I have to do. But he's a great thinker. And if you guys hear of any content that's similar to his, the other thing that I'm reading, I just subscribed to Bill Bishop's Cenocism Substack newsletter. Highly recommend for anybody who has a deep interest in anything really China and US related, which honestly it's just about everything else in the world right now. That newsletter at $168 a year is a steal. So highly recommend that to folks as well.
Gotcha, man. Yeah, the only reason I was asking about whether you'd seen those videos is because his content can kind of get repetitive. I think that he has kind of the same talk. So that was my only that was my only thing of maybe not purchasing Disunited Nations. But because you like it so much, I'm definitely going on Amazon right now.
Yeah, and if you want to be persuaded, take a look at what he wrote in his blog recently. He listed about 9 different, almost chapter-length things that got cut. And they are all different and unique. And I think when you see how much he writes, he probably just at your point. I've seen the same speech a few times, but yeah, there's a lot of depth and differentiation to the content.
Awesome, man. I'll definitely be heading to Amazon. Oh wait, Amazon's not doing anything with books. I think only critical items.
Digital.
Digital audio. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. But Mike, hey, this was a great episode, man. I guess everybody knows where to find you on Twitter, as well as TheBlock.com, or is it TheBlockCrypto.com?
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, TheBlock.com was going to cost us too much money. So we are, TheBlockCrypto.com, and I'm at MDUDAS on Twitter. Yeah, really appreciate the time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
All right, man. Thanks.
Have a great one.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to check out Layer 1 on all the audio and video platforms listed in the description. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.